Hey, what's up? We're back a little early. Book talk. We're back with book talk, and I'm talking about Literature and Evil, Georges Bataille. Can you see that? Yeah, it looks better. It's a little white. Okay, so Literature and Evil. In this book, he kind of talks about. I think it's 10 authors, but for some reason, Latreille got. Let's see. Yeah, there's 9 authors. I mean, Latreille gets taken out. Maybe it's going to be like a book length essay on its own. It didn't need to be in here. He talks about it. He talks about in the preface. He talks about I belong to a turbulent generation born to literary life in the tumult of surrealism. In the years after the Great War, there was a feeling which was about to overflow. Literature was stifling within its limitations and seemed pregnant with revolution. These studies, which are so strikingly coherent, were written by a mature man. And they appeared, and he wrote these for critique and stuff. He goes, these studies are a result of my attempts to extract the essence of literature. Literature is either the essential or nothing. I believe that the evil, an acute form of evil, which it expresses, has a sovereign value for us. But this concept does not exclude morality. On the contrary, it demands a hyper morality. Literature is a communication. Communication requires loyalty. A rigorous morality results from complicity in the knowledge of evil, which is the basis of intense communication. Literature is not innocent, it is guilty and should admit itself so. Action alone has its rights, its prerogatives. I wanted to prove that literature is a return to childhood, but has the childhood that governs it a truth of its own? Before the necessity of action, we are overwhelmed by Kafka's honesty, which abrogates no rights for itself. Whatever the lesson contained in Genet's books, Sartre's defense is inadmissible. Literature had to plead guilty. And he says that here's a note. I have omitted from this collection a study on Le Chants de Malraux, which stood so well on its own that it seems superfluous. Okay. It's hardly any point in my saying that Lautréamont's poetry corresponds to my own theories. Are his poems not literature pleading guilty? They baffle us, but if they can be understood, it is surely in the light of my interpretation. So, for in the first chapter, he talks about Emily Bronte, which is kind of a weird choice. Emily Bronte had a short life, and she wrote Wuthering Heights, which is kind of a weird book to. If you live to 30 and you just write one book, I mean that's pretty amazing. But Wuthering Heights isn't. I mean, for someone that's 30 and kind of lived the sheltered existence. I mean, Wuthering Heights is kind of an odd book. Let's see. Um, though few people could have been more severe, more courageous, or more proper, she fathomed the very depths of evil. This was the task of literature, imagination, and dream. Her life, over the time, over by the time she was 30, was completely sheltered. She was born in 1818 and rarely left the Yorkshire vicarage set in a rugged wasteland where her father, an Irish pastor, gave her an austere education, but little else. Okay, so in chapter, let's see what he says. He has a he has like these kind of titles for his this one. Eroticism is the approval of life up until death. If I discuss Emily Bronte, I must carry a basic premise to its logical conclusion. I believe eroticism to be the approval of life up until death. Sexuality implies death, not only in the sense in which the new prolongs and replaces that which has disappeared, but also in that the life of the being who reproduces himself is at stake. To reproduce oneself is to disappear, and even the most basic asexualized being is rarefied by reproduction. Those who reproduce themselves do not die if by death we understand the passage from life to decomposition, but he who was by reproducing himself ceases to be what he was because he doubles himself. Individual death is but one aspect of the proliferative excess of being. Sexual reproduction itself is only one aspect, the most complicated of the immortality of life, which is at stake in asexualized reproduction. So, let's see. So, let's see what we're talking about. So, I just mentioned. I talked about Kathy Acker, and we had the uh, reading, writing, hell. That was the class, but we read this book, and we kind of read a lot of the authors in here, and we focused on Bronte. And I was saying that maybe the Story of the Eye was Georges Bataille's version of Wuthering Heights, and Kathy Acker, of course, didn't like shoot it down. So, so we talk a little bit about evil. So let's see. Oh yeah, let's see. Is this the part? Okay, let's read this. This opposition is of primary importance in Wuthering Heights. As Jacques Blundell pointed out, we must always keep in mind that feelings are formed during Catherine's and Heathcliff's childhood. But even if children have the power to forget the world of adults for a time, they are nevertheless doomed to live in this world. Catastrophe ensues. Heathcliff, the foundling, is obligated to flee from the enchanted kingdom where he raced Catherine on the heath, while Catherine, though she remains as rugged as ever, denies her wild childhood. She allows herself to be seduced by the easy life personified by the young, rich, and sensitive gentleman. Let's see what else. Let's see, there was something else in here. Let's see what else. Okay, so yeah, talking about the character of Catherine Earnshaw, like that she was devoted to evil, but she was inexperienced. He talks about evil, therefore, if we examine it closely, is not only the dream of the wicked; it is to some extent the dream of good. Death is the punishment sought and accepted for this mad dream, but nothing can prevent the dream from having been dreamt. It was dreamt by the unfortunate Catherine Earnshaw as well as Emily Bronte. How can we doubt that Emily Bronte, who died for having experienced the states of mind which she described, identified herself with Catherine Earnshaw? Wuthering Heights says he kind of compares it to Greek tragedy. And let's see what else we can glean really quick from here. I mean, this is a pretty short thing, but he mentions Jacques Blundell a lot of times in this. Oh yeah, there's a bit right by this poem here. Okay, so in my opinion, these lines from The Prisoner are the most powerful example of that feeling which underlies Emily Bronte's poetry. They convey her state of mind admirably. Finally, it matters little whether Emily Bronte really had what we call a mystical experience, for she appears to have reached the very essence of such an experience. Everything leads us to believe, wrote Andre Breton, that there is a certain point in the mind where the life and death, the real and the imaginary, the past and the future, the communicable and the incommunicable are no longer perceived in contradiction with one another. I shall add, good and evil, pain and joy. This point is indicated both by violent literature and the violence of mystical experience. Only the point matters. So let's see what else. Okay, so that pretty much ends. Let's see, it ends. An honorable human being loyally accepts the worst consequences of his challenge. Sometimes he even goes out to meet them. The cursed share is the gamble, the risk, the danger. It is also sovereignty, but sovereignty must be expiated. The world of Wuthering Heights is the world of a hostile sovereignty. It is also the world of expiation. Once the expiation has been accepted, the true smile of life appears. So, yeah, okay, so the second chapter is about Baudelaire, but it's more. I totally forgot that Sartre wrote a full book about Baudelaire. And he kind of, let's see, he's talking about Sartre's view. In order for liberty to be complete, it has to be offered the choice of being infinitely wrong. It is therefore unique in this whole universe, committed to good, but it has adhered totally. It must adhere totally to good, maintain it, and strengthen it in order to be able to plunge into evil. And he who damns himself acquires a solitude which is a feeble image of the great solitude of the truly free man. In a certain sense, he creates in a universe where each element sacrifices itself in order to converge in the greatness of the whole. He brings out the singularity, that is to say, the rebelliousness of the fragment or the detail. Thus, something appears which did not exist before, which nothing can efface, and which was in no way prepared by worldly materialism. So, let's see. Sartre, yeah, I don't know if Sartre really understands uh, the poetry of Baudelaire. Sartre also refers in passing to the relationship between evil and poetry, but he draws no conclusions from it. The evil element is very apparent in Baudelaire's work, but it is connected with the essential nature of poetry. But is it connected to this? Sartre says nothing about this. He merely describes as liberty that possible state in which man is no longer supported by traditional good or by the established order. In comparison to this major position, he regards the poet's position as minor. Baudelaire never went beyond the phase of childhood. He defined genius as childhood regained at will. Childhood lives in faith. But if the child grows older, grows superior to his parents in intelligence, and looks over their shoulder, he may see that behind them there is nothing. The duties, the rights, the precise and limited obligations suddenly disappear, unjustified and unjustifiable. He suddenly experiences his terrible liberty. Everything has to be begun again. He suddenly emerges in the solitude and nothingness. That was what Baudelaire wanted to avoid at all costs. See, at one point in the study, Sartre reproaches Baudelaire for having regarded moral life as a constraint and never as a tortured quest. Let's see. So, what else? Oh yeah, I like this part. If man did not shut his eyes in a sovereign manner, wrote Rene Char, he would end up by no longer seeing things worth looking at. But Sartre says, for the rest of us, it is enough to see the tree or the house. Absorbed as we are in contemplating them, we forget ourselves. Baudelaire was the man who never forgot himself. He watched himself seeing, he watched in order to see himself watching. It was his awareness of the tree or the house which he watched, and things only appeared to him through his awareness, paler, smaller, less touching, as though he saw them through a pair of opera glasses. He did not point to each other like a signpost or a book marker. Their immediate mission was to bring the individual back to self awareness. And further on, there was an original distance between Baudelaire and the world, which is not ours. Between the objects and himself, there was always a somewhat cloying lucidity, like a breath of warmer summer air. Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I think that's quoting Sartre. And then towards the end, in a sense, poetry is always the opposite of poetry. I believe that the misery of poetry is faithfully represented in Sartre's image of Baudelaire. There is inherent in poetry an obligation to turn unsatisfaction into a permanent object. In a first impulse, poetry destroys objects which it seizes. By destroying them, it returns them to the elusive fluidity of the poet's existence, and it is at this point that it hopes to regain the identity of the world and man. But at the same time, it releases the objects. It tries to seize this release. All it can do is substitute this release for what it has seized from reduced life. It can never allow the release to take place of the objects it once seized. So, yeah, there was a quote um, in here somewhere about. I mean, Baudelaire was trying to do something that was impossible, and that was a good thing. I think it was, his poetry is sort of. I wish I could find it. I should have underlined it, but his poetry never really achieves what it wants to. It's kind of like in practice. It strives to go beyond poetry in a way. I think. I mean, I'm just making it up, but yeah, I'm looking at some of the. Yeah, Sartre's book came out in '46, so yeah, I'm guessing this book was written in the '50s. So let's stop there. He also, I'll probably do 2 or 3 parts. He also writes about Michelet, William Blake, Sade, Proust, Kafka, and Genet, and Lautréamont's not in this book, but it's probably in one of the other books. Oh, is there? I'm almost ready to wrap it up. Literature and Evil, Georges Bataille. Does anybody have? Okay, there. Person left. Okay, so thanks for listening to me. We're kind of starting to do a lot of interviews, so check out the Susan Deitch and Doug Broad, and check out all our interviews from last year. There was quite a number of them. There's a lot of good ones coming up that I'm looking forward to, and well, not really sure what's. I know there's a couple underway, but okay, thanks for watching. We'll be doing a lot more. I have a lot of I've done a few videos about the books I bought like during the break and stuff like that. I'm willing to talk about some of those. And I mean, I used to have a copy of this back when I lived in San Francisco like 30 years ago, and this is like a new copy. So it's great to read it again, and get some ideas, because I think like this and Angela Carter, the Bloody Chamber was like sort of was and the story of the eye was an influence on Five Fingers Make a Fist and stuff. Okay, so it's the secret's out of the bag. Thank you for listening. Follow, and like all the videos. Thank you.